Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Apopka High School welcomes you to Joe Sterling Gymnasium for game number 8 in the 9th annual Metro vs. Florida Challenge presented by Burnvat Orlando and St. Germain Chiropractic Clinic. Please welcome our guests wearing the black jerseys, visitors on the scoreboard from East Ridge High School. They are the Knights. And wearing the white jerseys, home on the scoreboard, representing the Orlando Metro Conference from Evans High School, please welcome the Trojans. Let's meet the teams, beginning with our guests from East Ridge. And we will start at wing with 6'2" senior number 5, Malcolm Reed. At guard, 6'2" senior number 20, Brian Lupianes. At guard, 6' junior number 22, Austin Grant. At guard, 6' senior number 24, Carter Holt. And finally for the Knights at center, 6'5", junior number 50, Treasure Bennett. The head coach of the Knights in his 17th year at East Ridge, Mr. Mike Clutter. And now let's meet the Evans Trojans, starting at guard at 5'9", senior number 2, Andrew Marcel. At guard, 6'4", senior number 3, Clarence Cummings. At guard and forward, 6'3", senior number 10, Dante Adderley. At forward, 6'7", senior number 21, Andy Antoine. And finally for the Trojans, at guard, 5'10", junior number 22, Deshaun Osborne. The head coach of the Trojans in his 2nd year at Evans, Mr. Lonza Morgan. The officials for tonight's game are from the Central Florida Officials Association here in Orlando. Tonight's game is being live streamed on our YouTube channel, Metro vs. Florida Challenge. If you have friends and family back in Clermont, back in Orlando, or wherever in the world they may be, make sure you send them a message and let them know that they can head over to the Metro vs. Florida Challenge channel on YouTube, and they can tune in live for this game and all of our games here at Joe Sterling Gymnasium for the 9th annual Metro vs. Florida Challenge. And good evening to those of you joining us on the webcast. My name is Mark Barchi, the media director for the Metro vs. Florida Challenge, and I am joined by Neil Fisher from the Apopka Chief. We'll be taking you through our 2nd game of our Saturday basketball action, our 8th game overall here at the Metro vs. Florida Challenge.
Well, again, thank you, Mark, and we begin a 2nd day here. I realize it's the 2nd game, but I mean we're still fairly early. Got 7 lined up tonight, and this should be a good matchup. Of course, every matchup you want to try to make it competitive. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But 2 of the better teams in the Central Florida area, not just as far as competing against other Central Florida teams, but they're known throughout the state. Evans had a very disappointing season last year, going only 12-14, well below their standards. This is a team that's expected to make runs to the state Final Four. And they've had a number of players going all the way back to the 70s. And I guess you could say Daryl Dawkins was the first star who came out of there. Players who are good enough to go to the NBA, and that's continued for about 45 years now.
Deshaun Osborne puts the Trojans on the board with a 3 from Clarence Cummings.
As you mentioned, Evans has undergone a recent coaching change with Lonza Morgan taking over.
Carter Holt on the pass from Reed puts the Knights on the board.
And they certainly have rebounded at the end of December. They were 10-3. Looking at the roster, unlike most of the teams here, they don't really have anybody who stands out, who's on any of the ESPN or Florida Hoops or National Hoops rankings.
Clarence Cummings for 3 on the pass from Dante Adderley.
But collectively, some of their parts are definitely greater than any individual. And as I said, 10-3 record, and they also are coming into this off the Grade 8 Tournament Championship.
Yeah, and so now we've got Evans with back-to-back 3s to open the game. And Neil, you and I have talked about this before, as we often cover games for Wekiva, but it's absolutely just as true here that getting out to an early lead is is an advantage in so many ways, even more so than just the scoreboard. As here we get a foul called against Carter Holt, his first and the team's first, sending Andy Antoine to the line.
So Evans, again, they're very much one of those teams. Reminds me of the Miami Hurricanes in football there up until about 92 when they won their 5 national championships. It doesn't really matter who the coach is. The style always remains the same. And Evans is one of those teams who high-powered, high-octane. They like to move the ball quickly, and it's not just about running up and down the court with a quick dribble. They pass the ball well, too.
Foul is called against Andrew Marcel. That's his first personal foul, the team's first.
Evans, of course, last night we saw, well, it didn't really pan out with both teams, but Edgewater and Leesburg, they're both known for, even for today's game, being extremely fast as far as the tempo and the quickness and the crispness of the passing. Their goal, it pretty much looked like it was 3 passes and you get it into the paint from the other paint. Evans doesn't move at not quite such a quick clip, but they still are faster than the average team in today's game as far as that pace.
Trojan block is called against number 10, Dante Adderley. That's his first personal and the team's second.
And, of course, Mark and I, for those of you who don't listen to Wekiva on a regular basis, we are the regular announcer broadcasters for Wekiva. So we are pretty familiar with Evans. They're one of the teams that we're definitely most familiar with because Evans and Wekiva are in the same district, that being 9A3. And I've always said it's the give no quarter, take no quarter district. Very physical, and you add that on to 4 teams that, again, like to play that fast pace, up the court, quick passing style.
And one good steal deserves another. Andy Antoine picks it off and then gives it back to Grant.
And so far we've seen that style from Evans as they drain a couple of trays here.
Deshaun Osborne to Andy Antoine, picking up the basket for the Trojans, and we'll pause for a timeout called by East Ridge. It'll be a 30-second timeout requested by the Knights, and we'll take this opportunity to thank our signature sponsor for this event, Burn Fat Orlando, where they invite you to step on the scale every day because they will put their money behind that. Money back guarantee. If you don't lose weight within the first 10 days, they will refund your money. Give them a call now at 855-889-THIN. That's 855-889-THIN for the tools and guidance that you need to achieve better health and your weight loss goals with an inviting atmosphere, customized approach, a friendly staff, and personalized programs for you. Fast results at Burn Fat Orlando, where you can lose up to 30 to 40 pounds.
So again, as I was saying before, we went to the break. Evans' style is definitely paying dividends here early with a 9-2 lead. They've scored all their points off of transition. That last basket, of course, was off of a turnover. The first 2 were trays, which came on quick transitions from rebounding. One other note here, as we get a missed field goal from East Ridge, and that is the ranking. Evans is number 5 in the state in Class 9A. According to Max Preps.
Yeah, and they're in a hot district because they're in the same district with Apopka, who's also having a banner year. Wekiva, which is kind of having, to be completely honest, a mediocre year.
Yeah, below par. Yeah, and again, I did talk a little bit about our familiarity with that, and it's a give no quarter, take no quarter, as I like to describe it. But if you put even West Orange and Wekiva, who are below 500, slightly before 500 right now, they're probably over 500 in most of the other districts.
Deshaun Osborne from Andrew Marcel, 4-3.
So not to leave out the Florida contingency here, but East Ridge, of course, as I mentioned, is a school that they're probably not as well known as Evans on the state level. They probably don't have quite as accomplished resume.
Deshaun Osborne in transition for the Trojans.
But nonetheless, Eastridge is always a school that seems to have the capability of getting out of the district. For those of you who don't follow high school basketball here in Florida, each district has a district championship tournament, and the two teams that make it to the final, or the teams that finish first and second, advance into the FHSAA postseason tournament. There are 32 teams in each of those tournaments, 9 classes.
And yeah, actually a big shakeup coming to that system next year. The tournament structure itself will remain the same, but how you get into that tournament will be dramatically different. The district tournaments going away in favor of using the Max Preps ranking system, and so that should help out schools, frankly, like Wekiva and Evans and Apopka and West Orange, who are perennially in a very strong district, and sometimes of course, you can only take 2 out of those districts into the postseason tournament, whereas a weaker district will also get 2 slots, even though neither one of them may be able to really perform alongside those top 64 teams. And so I think you're going to see a big shakeup next year when we see the system for getting into the regional playoffs change. Of course, once you are in the regional playoffs, the system is largely the same as it always has been.
Yeah, single elimination. So to finish up here on East Ridge, again, they're always a contender to get out of the district. And but they are going through a transition here. They lost 11 players from a team that went 17-6 last year. Unfortunately, that team did suffer somewhat of an upset in the district semifinals. And that, again, goes back to your point, Mark, about the format being changed. They obviously were one of the 2 best teams. Unfortunately, they didn't play quite as well as they had the whole season at the most inopportune of times, and that was in the semifinals of the district championship tournament.
Good pass, but Reed can't convert, and the rebound goes to Clarence Cummings.
And as I mentioned here, Evans, at the time they had 2 trays off of rebounding. They were able to get into transition because of rebounding. That has actually continued. I think it's up to about 5 or 6 now where points have been scored off of a rebound and getting into transition. And that's actually been one of the weaknesses for East Ridge. East Ridge is a very good shooting team from mid-range, but weak on the rebounding.
Foul is called against number 50, Treasure Bennett is first and the team's second. And some personnel changes coming in for Evans. 2, 23, 34.
So a 14-2 run here forged by Evans to start this game as we approach the 2-minute mark. Make that 17-2.
Nicholas Touzé on the inbound from Arthur Johnson for 3.
So, and again, Mark, we've seen this in a couple of other games where one of the teams get off to this phenomenal run, and it's really sustained and propelled by great shooting coming from transition opportunities. Now, in both of those other games, the team that suffered the run was able to come back and at least make it somewhat competitive.
Block is called against Malik Favors. That's his first, the team's third, and it'll send Clarence Cummings to the free throw line, shooting 2 for the Trojans.
In this particular case, though, I think we're really seeing the youth of East Ridge coming into play here. And all the strength versus weakness has definitely been exploited by Evans, again, starting with the strong rebounding, and East Ridge knowing from the beginning of the season that they were going to have to work on the rebounding.
Offensive rebound here. And they won't get anything out of it, though, as he's called for traveling. Knights ball. Checking into the game for the Knights, number 22, Austin Grant.
So East Ridge catches a break there, and to be honest, they're going to need a couple more of those at this point to even be able to get back into this ball game. So like we've seen with most teams today, Evans has gone man-to-man throughout the whole game, and again, it's paid dividends. They're playing well with the 18-2 lead here.
Yeah, and we have not seen East Ridge be able to penetrate effectively. They've taken a lot of kind of wild, low-percentage three-point shots, none of which have gone in for them so far. Yeah. We've only seen effective penetration that one time, which is how they got their points on the board that they have.
Yeah, and that's certainly out of characteristics for each, which, as I explained, they're very good at the mid-range shots.
Nicholas Tuzet from Clarence Cummings for 3. Speaking of perimeter shooting, that's going to be a huge stat and a huge difference here as Evans has been on fire from outside the arc.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to be a basketball guru. I don't have the stats right in front of me right now. I don't get them until the end of the quarter, but it's pretty obvious. It's really obvious. Evans is shooting over 50% from the field, and in particular, three-point range.
Eastridge is 1 for 7 from 2-point range and 0 for 3 from 3-point range right now. Evans is 2 of 6 from 2-point range, 5 of 8 for 62.5% from 3-point range.
But again, remember, the reason that Evans is getting so many three-point field goals is because they're setting themselves up in transition. 4 seconds left here. Evans got a shot to really put a dagger in the heart of Eastridge.
That takes us to the end of the first period, and it is a 19-point lead. 21-2 is the score at the end of the opening 8 minutes here in Game 8 of the 9th Annual Metro vs. Florida Challenge. And we'll take this opportunity to thank our friends at Baptiste Orthodontics. They now have 3 offices here in Central Florida. They, of course, have their offices on Colonial and Conroy Windermere Road that have been around for a while, but now they have an office that is more convenient than ever to the Apopka community, and it is just across the street from Kitland Nelson Park at 12 South Park Avenue here in Apopka. More convenient than ever to our Apopka fans. And they have everything that you need, from traditional braces to ceramics, Invisalign, Propel, Clear Correct, and much more. Give them a call at 1-800-300-7755. And so the Knights get the opening possession of the second period.
And yeah, as you mentioned, Mark, here, since we're starting the second quarter, statistically, the difference has been three-point field goal shooting. Both teams are shooting well below average at 2-point, only 1 of 7 for Eastridge and 2 of 8 for Evans. So that's 25.2 compared to about 15.
Fouls called against Andrew Marcel, his second, the team's third. Checking into the game for the Trojans, number 11, Nicholas Tuzet.
But when you look at the three-point field goal percentage, and actually this went down because they took a desperation shot as the buzzer went off, Evans is 5 of 9. That's a blistering 55%. Eastridge is 0 of 3. So, and the other part of those two statistics, the shooting, the field goals, is not only is Evans shooting the ball well from three-point range, but they're taking 7 more shots, 17 compared to 10, and that's because of an 8-5 advantage in turnovers and a 14-6 advantage in rebounding.
Yeah, so I mean, strictly from a logistical standpoint, obviously I always like to see good games here at the Metro versus Florida Challenge, and that's always the first concern. But strictly from a logistics standpoint, since we are more than half an hour behind, it wouldn't hurt to have a running clock game if Evans can pull that off for us and help us to get back on schedule, since we still have 5 more games to go, and we would really like to get out of here around 9:30, 10 o'clock tonight at the latest.
So for those of you, if you're not familiar, if you're joining us for the first or second time, this is the Metro versus Florida Challenge. As we got a missed free throw there, a missed field goal attempt from Eastridge. And basically what it is, it's based on the ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference versus Big Ten Challenge. In that particular challenge at the college level, every year before conference play, the 2 first place teams in each conference meet up, and the 2 second place teams meet up, and the 3rd place teams, and so on. And then at the end of the event, they add up which conference, which team representing the conference, which conference wins the most games. A little bit different here in the aspect that you got all the teams in Orange County belonging to Metro Conference, and they take on a team from outside the Conference of Florida. But the end result is the same, where you add up how many teams from the Metro Conference wins.
Hold is called against Dante Adderley, his second, the team's fourth. Checking into the game for Eastridge, Carter Holt and Dawson Metcalf.
So the end result is each team from the Metro Conference, how many victories they get is added up against how many teams representing the Florida contingency. We had 3 games on Thursday, 3 games last night. We have a total of 7 today, and 7 more on Monday during the MLK Junior holiday. Right now, it's 4-2 in favor of Florida. They won the first 4. The Metro Conference has mounted, I guess you say, a mini streak here of 2 in a row.
Clarence Cummings hits the basket on the pass from Andy Antoine.
And again, I know we're still early, still only 10 minutes into the ball game, but if this score holds, it will be 4-3 as the Metro Conference is letting the rest of the state, the Florida contingency, know it's not that, they do have a little something here in this year's event.
Fouls called against Evans number 23, Raquan James. That's his first and the team's 5th. Checking into the game for the Knights, number 42, Khalik Jones.
And also, logistically, Mark, we are here at Apopka High School, and we are inside the Joe R. Sterling Gymnasium, which is only about 5 or 6 years old. For those of you who are not familiar, don't follow Central Florida or even Apopka High School basketball, Joe R. Sterling was the coach of Apopka High School in the 50s and 60s, and he coached the team to their only state championship way back in 1962. Unfortunately, but as is, Coach Sterling passed away in his 90s about 10 months ago. So when this event first started, it really wasn't in honor of Coach Sterling, but I would have to say since his passing, that is part of the background of this event.
Deshaun Osborne picks up 2 for the Trojans.
So, of course, one of the advantages of being in the media is that you do get to meet a lot of people like Coach Sterling. I only got a chance to talk to him about half a dozen times. But from my experiences with him, I'd say Coach Sterling was certainly a man who did have a positive influence on many young men's life.
Carter Holt picks up 2 for the Knights.
And Coach Sterling certainly represented and had a career that was supposed to be about a career that was what it was supposed to be about, and that was having that positive influence on young men.
Jumper for Austin Grant won't go here. Finally, a little bit of life for the Knights as they got a jumper to go there on the previous possession. They're not going to be able to repeat that magic, though, as Brian Lupianes lets the ball go out of bounds. Trojans ball. Checking into the game for the Knights, number 34, Janelle Cuthbert. And we'll pause here for a timeout. What kind of timeout? What was the timeout?
They called it. Coach.
What kind?
30 seconds, sorry.
30-second timeout requested by the Trojans. And we'll take this opportunity to thank our friends at Elevate Orlando, a civic nonprofit that's focused on helping students grow in strength of character and application of essential life skills. They do that both inside and outside the classroom, through regular classroom elective courses that are accredited with Orange County Public Schools, as well as mentorship, where their employees are able to spend more than 50% of their time. Check out Elevate Orlando with a 98% graduation rate and 96% post-secondary placement.
And so with the 25-4 lead, I guess the one good thing you can say if you're East Ridge is that the lead hasn't grown here in the second quarter. But looking, one other note here about the records and this event in itself. Evans is one of the better teams record-wise with a 7-3 record in this event.
Foul called against number 44, Dawson Metcalf, his first, the team's 4th, and it sends Clarence Cummings to shoot 2 for the Trojans.
East Ridge is only 1-4 So despite Eastridge always through the years putting together an above average record, and as I said, at least being a contender to get past the district championship tournament, they have not really fared very well here in this particular tournament or event.
Yeah, I think that there's a little bit of forgiveness for calling it a tournament, which even Scott Williams and I have both made that faux pas. It is not in the most technical sense a tournament.
It's an event.
Right, because there is no bracket, there is no series of games where your performance in one influences where you play in the next one. But that being said, because it is a multi-game event, a lot of people lump that all together under tournament, as Clarence Cummings picks up a jumper for the Trojans.
And now we're seeing, even with the 24-point lead, Evans going full court defense, remaining in man-to-man. I think that's more of using an opportunity to get some work in. Evans does not use full court man-to-man that often, so I think it's an opportunity to get some work in for that particular defense.
Nick Touzé on the pass to Andy Antoine for the Trojan basket.
And, with 3 minutes left here.
Number 21, Andy Antoine on the pass from Deshaun Osborne.
And with 3 minutes left here before halftime mark, I think all we can really say in the most accurate description, trying to be concise, is the more it rains, the more it pours.
Clarence Cummings is called on the hit. His first personal foul, the team's 7th.
So, and I hate to bring this up, Mark, but, we are getting close to the running clock. Again, for those of you who are not familiar with high school basketball here in Florida, 35 is the running clock. As far if a team gets a 35-point lead in the second half, the clock continues to run and only stops between quarters and for timeouts.
Right, and of course, so we're guaranteed to have a traditional clock for the next 2 minutes and 55 seconds, since that rule cannot be invoked until the third quarter. However, Evans is on pace right now to have the entire second half in a running clock situation.
Unfortunately, as we said at the beginning of this game, we really thought this was going to be one of the games with the odds of it being more, one of the games whose odds were a little bit higher of seeing a competitive game. As Evans now drops back into half-court man-to-man. And it really has not turned out that way, despite Eastridge's, inaccuracy, and we mentioned rebounding at the top of that list.
Khalik Jones for 3 on the pass from Janelle Cuthbert.
They've just been swamped by Evans here. Evans is shooting the ball tremendously well from the three-point range. Again, 5 of 9. 5 of 9 at the end of the first quarter compared to 0 of 3 for Eastridge.
Deshaun Osborne is fouled on the attempt. He'll go to the line and shoot 2 for the Trojans. The foul is called against number 24, Carter Holt. That's his second personal foul, the team's 5th.
But advantages built very quickly in rebounding, as well as turnovers, was really the catalyst for being able to get that 5 of 9 field goal shooting in the first quarter. And they also took, in general, field goals in general, seven more. So again, as I like to say, you don't have to be a basketball guru or savant to understand the more field goals you take, the more likely you are to score.
First free throw is a hit for Osborne. Rebound to Metcalf after the second free throw does not fall. 2 minutes to go here in the half, and it is a 25-point advantage for the Trojans. Andrew Marcel is called on the reach-in. That's his third, the team's 8th at the line, shooting 1-on-1 bonus, Janelle Cuthbert.
I guess from the East Ridge perspective, they at least are showing some semblance of a game here in the last couple of minutes, as the lead has been cut back down to 24 points with 1:54 left.
Fouls called against Janelle Cuthbert. That's his first, the team's sixth. Checking into the game for East Ridge, number 40, Ben Ritzel.
So, and of course, with just under 2 minutes left here, Mark, we're going to be in bonus the rest of the way.
Arthur Johnson to Raquan Jones for 3.
Evans remaining in man-to-man defense. As I mentioned, they did go full court for a couple of possessions, but have played full half-court defense for almost the entire game, and another turnover here for East Ridge.
Traveling. Trojans ball.
So again, Mark, again, one of the schools of thought when it comes to basketball is when you get a lot of turnovers and you're using mainly a half-court defense, it really shows that the team is not, as we mentioned at the beginning of the game, they have that blend of physical play as well as speed and quickness, and they make very good decisions as far as knowing when to attack and when to lay off.
Deshaun Osborne with a jump shot for the Trojans.
And I guess if you're East Ridge, excuse me, you probably want me to be quiet here because I just mentioned that East Ridge had cut a little bit into the lead, got down to 24 points. In about 10 seconds, that lead has now climbed back up to 29, the largest of the ball game.
At present, East Ridge has only hit, I believe, 2 or 3 field goals, and then they've added a few free throws to get them up to their 9 points. Here's a nice work on defense, though. Malcolm Reed on the steal, and he's fouled on the attempt. He'll go to the line and shoot 2. The foul is called against number 11, Nicholas Tuzet. That's his first and the team's 9th.
So with 6.4 seconds left here in the half, I can safely say, Mark, a rare mistake for Evans there. Self-inflicted damage is not maybe only the second or third time this half. And East Ridge finally reaches double-digit marks there.
And that takes us to halftime, and it is a big lead for the Trojans headed into the locker rooms. 38-10 is your score at intermission here in Game 8 of the 9th Annual Metro vs. Florida Challenge, presented by Burn Fat Orlando and St. Germain Chiropractic.
You need it? Or are you guys? Yeah, here's all my notes. Here's all my notes.
Mark, where you been at, dog? You on what, eating?
The Trojans have the opening possession of the third period. And welcome back to Joe Sterling Gymnasium. Mark Barchi here with you once again, along with Neil Fisher, as we get ready for second half action here in Game 8 of the 9th Annual Metro versus Florida Challenge. We're going to get the Knights strike first with Treasure Bennett.
So I guess if you can take some positive, that was one they're scoring first for Eastridge. And you know, Mark, again, I'm not really sure there's much we can say about this particular game. A 14-2 run, it was how the game began, and that lead actually got all the way to 29 there at halftime.
Andy Antoine puts up the first points of the half for the Trojans.
And I think pretty much what we just saw in that last possession with Evans scoring summarizes the first half here. I don't really like, not really any nice way to say this. This has been a thorough domination by Evans. Looking at the stats like we do at the beginning of each quarter, Evans, of course, started off 5 of 9 from three-point range. They actually only took one three-pointer in the second quarter, and they made it, so it's now 6 of 10. But they then started shooting the ball much better from inside. They were only 2 of 8 in the first quarter. They wound up 8 of 17 at halftime, so brought up their average almost double from 25% to just below 50, about 47 there. And again, as I mentioned, throughout that first half, they built advantages, Evans that is, in rebounds and turnovers, which allowed them to be able to take more field goals, and each shot, generally speaking, was the better, more high percentage field goal attempt. Those advantages were 23-12 in rebounds and 13-8 in turnovers.
Bennett to Austin Grant for 3.
And Deshaun Osborne was the leading scorer, not only for Evans, but obviously for the game, 13 points at halftime. And after that blistering first half, Evans has actually cooled down a little bit here at the start of the second half.
Foul is called against number 3, Clarence Cummings, his second, the team's first this half. After Holt blocks the first, Clarence Cummings gets fouled on the putback attempt. Foul called against number 50, Treasure Bennett. That's his second, or his first, excuse me, and the team's first.
And that was just simply a rebound that Cummings just grabbed that ball. That was, that's my ball and you're not going to get it. And now Evans, as we saw in the first half, they're going to a full court defense. They're remaining man-to-man.
Treasure Bennett adds 2 more for the Knights. Foul was called against Carter Holt, his third, the team's second. At the line shooting 2 is Dante Adderley.
And again, you know, we don't get a lot of opportunities to cover Eastridge, but in the few, usually we do see him at least a couple times every year, Mark. And Coach Clutter usually is not a very animated man. He usually does not disagree with the umps. But if you cannot hear it, he vehemently disagreed with that last call. And I guess some of that might have to do with the fact of the score and his team just not really, for lack of a better term of putting it, being competitive in this ball game.
Treasure Bennett on the pass from number 20, Brian Lupianes. Deshaun Osborne gets under the basket for the Trojans.
So I guess at least you can say to Eastridge's credit, the lead has not grown anymore since halftime. As a matter of fact, it's been cut by 4, looking a little bit more respectable and competitive.
Carter Holt on the pass to Malcolm Reed. Adderley to Cummings for the Trojan basket.
And there was, as Evans' play we have come to know and love, a strong offensive rebound followed by a strong pass inside, allowing Osborne to get an easy layup uncontested.
Block is called against number 22, Deshaun Osborne. His first, the team's second.
So with 11 minutes and 19 seconds still left in this game, quick look ahead. Next game's Lake Nona. They're representing the Metro Conference. Of course, they're still a fairly new school, only in their 5th year, and they will be taking on the Winter Spring Bears, who I guess you could say probably was not on Coach Williams' mind when he set the matchup, but they're one of the older schools in the Central Florida area.
Foul is called against number 22, Austin Grant, his first personal foul, and the team's third. At the line shooting number 34, Arthur Johnson.
So not only will our next matchup be a Metro versus Florida challenge, but it'll also be a new school versus an older school.
Checking into the game for East Ridge, number 30, Mike Powell. Putback made by Raquan James.
So the lead back up to 27 here as we dip under 3 minutes, 2 minutes 45 seconds to be exact. Evans again remaining in man-to-man defense.
Arthur Johnson with perhaps the least thrilling deflection of the night.
And Mark, we've seen a much slower pace here. And definitely the intensity was not what it was in the first half, in particular the first 4 or 5 minutes. That's not actually all that uncommon in games in themselves, but especially when you get into events like this where things do tend to drag on. Although Eastridge has come out and played better in the second quarter, or at least I guess you say they've been more competitive, it does look like they are at least somewhat resigned to the fact that they are not going to be able to get back into this ball game, at least as far as challenging for a win.
30-second timeout is requested by the Knights, and we'll take this opportunity to thank everyone who supports the Metro versus Florida Challenge, including the City of Apopka Commission, in particular Commissioner Kyle Becker, a proud supporter of Apopka High School and the Metro versus Florida Challenge. We also want to thank 1520 AM WBZW, your hometown station. They are great supporters of Blue Darter Athletics all year long, but in particular we want to thank them for their generous promotion of the Metro versus Florida Challenge, getting the word out about this massive 20-game showcase. Push is called against number 34, Arthur Johnson, his first, the team's third. Three-point basket scored for the Knights by number 20, Brian Lupianes.
Hard-fought basket there for East Ridge.
Clarence Cummings on the pass to Andrew Marcel for three. Clarence Cummings gets the basket and a chance to make it a three-point play. Austin Grant is called on his second personal foul, the team's fourth.
Opportunity now for Evans to extend the lead to the largest of the ball game, and they do at 30.
So a lot of credit to East Ridge for managing to really largely stop the bleeding this quarter. Unfortunately for them, though, they haven't really been able to shift the momentum the other direction.
Well, again, Mark, as I mentioned before that timeout, East Ridge did look like they came out and seemed determined to at least keep the score respectable as far as the lead not growing, but they did look at least somewhat resigned to the fact that they were not going to be able to challenge for a win. They have been much more competitive here in this second half. And of course, as soon as I say that, we get a very bad pass and an easy basket for Evans.
Andrew Marcel steals two for the Trojans.
So now, as we are in the last minute here in the third quarter, if you have not followed high school basketball, you do have a mercy rule, or if you prefer a running clock rule, and that's based simply if the league rose to 35 points, during the second half, the clock keeps running. It only stops for timeouts in the end of the quarters.
Arthur Johnson gets the basket, a chance to make it a three-point play. The foul is called against Mike Powell, his first, the team's fifth. Checking into the game for the Trojans, Ernest Cox and Deshaun Osborne.
And if you can't hear Coach Cuff, East Ridge's coach, he vehemently disagrees with this opportunity for a three-point play. He's not disagreeing with the fact it was a foul. He just doesn't think the basket should count. And we are now in a running clock. And just for the record, I do agree, not that it matters, but I do agree with the fact that that should not have been a three-point opportunity.
Raquan James adds two for the Trojans.
So as we tick off the last 7 seconds here of the third quarter, Mark, despite East Ridge coming out and playing much better, more competitive, and looking more like they're finding their game, they still wound up losing ground until the point of a running clock.
Austin Grant gets the three at the buzzer, and that will take us to the end of the third period, and it's a 61-27 score, with the Trojans carrying the torch for the Orlando Metro Conference and 8 minutes left in the ball game.
And to continue that thought, Mark, there, even though East Ridge played much better, much more competitive in that third quarter, I think that really says just how good this Evans team really is.
We'll take this opportunity to thank our friends at Burn Fat Orlando, who invites you to step on the scale each and every day and watch the pounds fall off. In fact, if you don't lose weight within the first 10 days, they'll refund your money. Call them now at 855-889-THIN. That's 855-889-THIN, offering a customized approach with personalized programs to give you fast results with real nutrition and a strong support network. Burn Fat Orlando, lose up to 30 to 40 pounds. The Knights have the opening possession of the fourth quarter. Block is called against number 30, Mike Powell. Shooting 1.
So again, as we mentioned there at the end of the third quarter, we are in a running clock situation, and that means that the clock does not stop except for timeouts.
Basket scored by Mike Powell.
So if you're just tuning in and you're not familiar with high school basketball here in Florida, that's why the clock will not stop during free throw attempts.
Steal here by Nick Tuzet. Perhaps a fancier than necessary move, but it'll work nonetheless as Arthur Johnson picks up 2 for the Trojans.
And barring an unbelievable comeback, which at least during my career of 26 years would be the greatest ever in terms of the deficit, the Metro Conference is going to cut the lead down to 4-3 and take its 3rd consecutive. For those of you who are just tuning in and are not familiar with this event, it is aptly named the Metro versus Florida Challenge. All the teams located, all the schools located in Orange County are a part of the Metro Conference. And each game one of those teams represents the Metro Conference. They're taking on a team from outside the Metro Conference. And this year we have some teams coming from as far away as Fort Myers and Cape Coral. They have yet to take the floor, but they will be coming up over the next 2 days. And at the end of the day, we add up which of the schools representing the Metro Conference wins and which of the schools that representing Florida wins, and we find out which is the better team. It's based on the ACC versus Big Ten Challenge in the college level. The Florida teams got off to a great start, winning the first 4, and now with Evans' victory, it will be 3 in a row for the Metro Conference.
Janelle Cuthbert in for Eastridge, as well as Dawson Metcalf.
So again, I did actually forget to mention this, but the clock does not stop at any point except for timeouts once you're in a running clock. What I did forget to mention was that also includes when the ball goes out of bounds. So we have 4.5 minutes left here, and we're not going to see much adding to the statistics.
Block is called against Deshaun Osborne, his second, the team's 4th. At the line, shooting Mike Powell.
So I think it's safe to say, Mark, that the statistics, at least when looking at them, throughout the game, Evans has thoroughly dominated, and that's not going to change. Again, I mentioned the very good field goal shooting from Evans. They started off the game shooting 5 of 9 in the first quarter. That's 55% compared to 0 of 3 for Eastridge, but they upped their 2-point field goal shooting as well. 2 of 8 after the first quarter. That actually was up to 8 to 17. So they went from 25 to just under 50% in that second quarter. They've continued in the third and into the fourth here, and they have been assisted, or what's created those opportunities is a strong advantage in rebounding, which was 23 to 12 at halftime, and turnovers 13 to 8. Not only did Evans shoot the ball well, but they have taken more shots, and that's particularly where that advantages in rebounding and turnovers have come into play.
Push called against Carter Holt, his 4th, the team's 7th. At the line, shooting 2 for the Trojans will be Deshaun Osborne.
And again, I know I've said this at least half a dozen during this game, but no matter how you look at this, it comes down to field goal percentage and field goal shooting. You don't have to be a basketball guru or savant or a mathematics professor to understand that if you shoot the ball more, you're going to score more points.
And Holtz just lets his dribble get away from him. It's picked off by Osborne, who then immediately draws the foul back. Foul's called against number 24, Carter Holt, on the push. That's his 5th personal foul, and he'll retire from the game with 5 points for the Knights. Checking into the game for him is number 30, Mike Powell. And at the line, shooting bonus, Deshaun Osborne. So particularly if you're East Ridge, that's a costly foul. You lose a player from the game. You also have to stop the clock for the mandatory substitute. Well, you don't stop the clock, but you have to stop the game for the mandatory substitution and then for the 2 bonus shots. So you just don't get to play a lot of basketball here in the 4th quarter when you have mistakes like that.
The worst possible situation on every level for East Ridge.
Shot.
So again, as we approach 1 minute here, and again it's a running clock, so whatever the clock says, it's exactly how much time is left in the ball game. I don't think we're going to get a timeout. A thoroughly dominating performance here by Evans. Again, East Ridge did come in with some weaknesses, starting with rebounding. But even with that, I don't think anyone expected a 38-point, now 40-point win.
Arthur Johnson picks up a jumper for the Trojans.
And Evans has certainly keyed on those disadvantages and thoroughly exploited them. And Evans has come out of the came out. They built a 14-2 lead. The lead was extended all the way to 29 on a halftime. And again, mentioned they took more field goal percentages, more field goal attempts, and they were the better ones.
Arthur Johnson on the dunk.
And in itself, if a team takes more field goal, the more field goal attempts a team takes, the more points they're going to score. And then you add on to that Evans took a tremendous amount, well over 2/3 of high percentage field goal attempts, and that advantage was created by rebounds and turnovers.
That takes us to the end of the ball game, and it is a 72-30 victory. A big win for the Orlando Metro Conference, and they now have notched 3 in a row for Orlando Metro. And we are not done yet. We've still got lots more basketball action coming your way here at Joe Sterling Gymnasium. Up next, we have the Lake Nona Lions taking on the Winter Springs Bears. That game starts 9 minutes ago. But we will be getting it to you after an abbreviated warm-up period. Give us about 9 minutes to turn things around here. If you are listening to us on our YouTube channel, you will need to exit out of this live stream and then get into the next live stream so that you can continue watching, because we do have each of the games on their own event on the Metro vs. Florida Challenge channel on YouTube. Once again, thanks for coming out to support the Trojans and the Knights in Game 8. Game 9 coming up next here at Joe Sterling Gymnasium.